करें शुरू? Good morning to everyone. So finally the year end has come and we are now going to have session end also. So this is the final class for your international finance, and in this class we will cover up one chapter, but before that we should recapitalize what we have already discussed, important for examination. As you know that the subject is highly numerical based, so most of the question will be numerical question. It is not something like only theory is going to be there. Rather, you can say 75 to 80% question will be numerical. Only 10 to 20% question or 25% question will be there, theory, to give you just a kind of a comfort. Otherwise, this subject has got 100% numerical background. Now, philosophically, international financial management is actually elevating financial management from a domestic environment to international environment. Two important aspects get added. One was country, another was currency. Currency, an identity of an economy. The moment it changes, operating in different economy, it requires conversion. If you operate independently in a country and you don't have any relationship with other country, issue is not there. Suppose you yourself operate in other country, an Indian company operating in India, Indian company operating in USA, and both the companies are operating independently, then question will not be there. There will be no issue. If they are not exchanging, they are not transferring, one is acting like an American company operating in America having currency USD, another operating in India having currency Indian rupee, they don't have any exchange interaction or any kind of consolidation in between. Finance comes into picture. If a company operating only in India but having market abroad also out of India, international finance will come. Operating in two countries and having interaction, international finance will come. Two different companies having interaction with each other, international finance will come. And not only that, if you are operating in India, not anywhere else, your product is also not sold outside, it is confined only to India, but your financing is from outside, then also international finance comes into picture. So international finance will be there on any account. If you have an interaction with the rest of the world, any of the other country, interaction will be there. So we first focused on currency market, and in the currency market called forex market, foreign exchange market, two levels, global and domestic market. In the global market, how the exchange takes place, and actually the starting from quotations, how one currency is represented in terms of another currency, how the exchange takes place. So quotation where direct, indirect were there, conversion of direct to indirect were there, then cross rates has been there, cross rates calculation were also made. Once cross rate were made, then after that available cross rate and created cross rate called synthetic rate were compared, and arbitrage opportunity were found. How much arbitrage is available? 2-point and 3-point arbitrage were there. 2-point arbitrage called uncovered arbitrage, 3-point arbitrage called covered arbitrage. 3 were there. It got calculated. One numerical question is confined there. You have to calculate arbitrage and it is going to come. Benefits because of that could be there. If relationship is known with certainty and if relationship is holding, based on that relationship, we can forecast it. What is expected exchange rate in a given point of time in future? Maybe 1 month forecast, 3 months forecast, 1 year forecast we can make it. That relationship we started making or establishing based on certain principles. Few of those principles were, one was interest rate parity, IRP we used. Considering that interest rate in two economy connected to each other had to be identical, had to be same. And when we said which interest rate has to be same, then various types of interest rate like your nominal rates, real rates, we started calculating. We calculated that. When we say real rate parity or real interest rate parity, it has to be equal. And to understand real rate and nominal rate, inflation were also very important. We took it. So actually through money market, we tried to forecast the exchange rate and that was based on interest rate parity principle. Even through goods market, where the laissez-faire is there, that is free trade, goods market, price has to be one, law of one price. And law of one price says that in two economy, those who are connected to each other can't have two different price because then arbitrage opportunity will originate. So price has to be same. And that is called purchasing power parity. PPP were there. One question from here also is going to be there. So IRP and PPP also is going to have one question each. That will lead to your forecasting. Forecasting is going to be made. So you can easily forecast that. We also looked upon, is there any predictor? Economic philosophy of forecasting is also there. Balance of payment concept, balance sheet concept, macroeconomic variable concept, so many concepts are there which basically help in forecasting exchange rate. Balance of payment basically talks about trade basis, how much inflows and outflows of the currency will take place. If too much of your inflows are there, then in that case, too much of inflow leads to depreciation of the currency. And if too much of import will be there, you will always be in pressure of demanding the foreign currency, then in that case, appreciation of foreign currency will take place. That's the way it is viewed. So depending upon country's productivity, country's trade, all decides about it. Even forward rate is considered to be one of the unbiased predictor of the future dated spot rate related to currency exchange. Once we did this, then we turned back to domestic currency market. And in domestic currency market, we found that domestic currency is considered to be currency and rest all currencies are commodities. And in that market, it is not meant for trade, exchange only, currency trade, rather for some business, some trade need decides about currency demands. And on that basis, broadly we considered three different types of the quotations. One was called TT rate, telegraphic transfer rates, another was called bill rates, and third was called TC rates. Even fourth rate is also there called cash rates. Cash rate is also there. And accordingly, bid and ask, premium had to be decided or the charge has to be decided, brokerage has to be counted on that, whatever the call margin has to be put on it, and different rate had to be synthesized. This was meant for domestic market. Once we have done that domestic market quotations, then finally we moved to exposure, and exposure was related to three broad: economic exposure, transaction exposure, and translation exposure. Economic exposure were generally for those organizations who were looking for establishing the business abroad, their economic happenings of that particular location, like an Indian is looking for China to establish the business, Indo-China relationship, China's overall economic condition, demand in that market, facility available, political situation, currency, all those things will come into picture, and that exposure is called economic exposure. We had already discussed in length, barring one important point that was called numerical based on that, which today we are going to discuss, how we are going to sit with. Second was translation exposure, and in that translation exposure is actually looking into the exposure, how you are going to count, how you are going to consider. Just a second. Okay. Now, when translation exposure were made, we looked upon that from one currency prepared balance sheet or income statement has to get translated into another currency as well. 4 different methods we used. One was current non-current method, monetary non-monetary method, temporal method, and finally current rate method. Current rate method was basically FSB 52, Financial Accounting Standard Board's 52 number, and that exchange has to be prepared, that exchange has to be made. Okay, that's the way it is viewed. One question from translation must coming in the exam. Maybe 2 different methods, you have to have that income statement and balance sheet given in one currency, you have to convert into parent company's currency, and you have to look into that any kind of translational gain or loss is going to be there, how it is going to be treated, how it is going to be used. Okay. Now, one more important aspect I will try to mention here is, whenever you are making these translations, 3 previous methods, that is current non-current method, monetary non-monetary method, third one is temporal method, treats the translational gain and losses as the real gain and loss and take it to the income statement. Whereas the 4th method called current rate method treats it as a notional gain or loss and create a separate account, and in that account it keeps in, plugged in account, equity plugged in account, it keeps it. And that balance basically could be debit or credit balance depending upon the kind of amount available to you. So that fundamental difference you have to always keep in mind. The third exposure we discussed about transaction exposure, which is because of trade, because of exchange, because of transfer of money and changing exchange rate has got impact generally to exporter and importer, and how you are going to help it starting from forward. Why we didn't discuss too much, because we have already discussed for derivatives. Financial derivative is actually the management and measure of the transaction exposure. Transaction exposure has to be managed accordingly. So you can go for forward booking, you can go for futures, you can go for options, you can take positions to that. These were the various ways through which we made it. Then we also managed multinational working capital management and especially receivables, payables management and cash management. Under the cash management, we looked upon how you can have leading, how you can have lagging, pooling of accounts, netting of accounts, help you to make it. And on netting, we made one numerical also. How 4 different locations have got payables and receivables, and making the nettings of that, how those payables and receivables can get reduced to a greater extent. That also important, and one question from there. It will be set. So that's the way question has to come to you. Okay, you have to prepare yourself. Now, next to this, we are going to now make it is capital budgeting, one very important segment of the international financial management and a kind of final segment of our international financial management. Look here how it works. Capital budgeting means deciding about how much fund has to be used. Basically, when you install a capacity, means you establish a business, you require fund. So from where fund will come? From where money will come? That money has to be counted, it has to be considered. So here, understanding of capital budgeting, we have seen, should we invest or not invest, that question has to be there. In the capital budgeting, that appraisal has to be made. And the most important methods which you have used, because you have studied that first review of domestic capital budgeting was actually using NPV and IRR method in your corporate finance semester 2. Okay, capital budgeting had been there. Now we are using it for international business. There had been a certain assumptions, whether you explicitly mention or not, but those assumptions are there when you use NPV as one of the capital budgeting appraisal techniques. What is that? NPV, you use one particular discounting rate. See, what is 3 information are there in your NPV method? Information number 1, you require to have a cash flow, both outflow and inflow, for a given period of time. So first you to know that economic life, a particular life, like if it is a project nature, or if it is a business which is going concern, infinite life could be there. So you have to decide about the economic life. Second is, during that life, your both outflow and inflow has to be decided. Initial investment and the future cash inflows has to be set. And third is what kind of discounting rate you are going to use. Discounting rate has to be applied. Clear? That discounting rate is nothing but it is the rate at which you will be making the time equivalence. And money in a future date, what will be the value today, what equivalence you are going to use, that particular discounting rate is going to get applicable. Only 3 information, your entire NPV is over. What is the assumption here, which has not been stated? Assumption is that whatever the forecasting you have made is perfect. You decided today that an X amount is going to be your initial outlay, that remain X. You decided that there will be a series of Y1, Y2, Y3, Y4, Y5 will be coming to you till Y infinite. In future inflow will be there. You are very sure this is what inflow is going to be there. And not only that, if you decided a particular K as the discounting rate, for your entire life K discounting rate is going to be applicable. Okay. So this is what the different values are there. It is applicable. Now here a question arises that, are you sure this is what your cash outlay is going to be there? If outlay changes, then, which is a normal case. Second, if your future cash inflow is going to change, economic life is going to change, and so on. Different concepts are going to be applied. So a question arises here, how we are going to treat them. Not only that, if suppose any kind of adjustment or any kind of factors which is going to change because of some interference, like what could be those factors? Suppose a country, that's where I am linking your economic exposure now, those country where corruption is high, and because of corruption your outlay is going to be high. You have to pay more. It is not only the price, you have to pay bribe also. Price plus bribe is your total outflow. How you are going to incorporate that in your business? Will it be part of your price or will you be treating it separately? Or sometime there could be a possibility of concession. What is that concession? Concession is, suppose government is giving you some facility and those facility has to be counted. Government is providing you facility, maybe concessional loan, maybe some tax exemption, tax holidays. Government could give you anything, maybe some special facilities, subsidies, how you are going to treat them. So any kind of adverse impact like corruption, like restrictions, like withholding, any social disturbances, how you will incorporate into your capital budgeting, or any kind of facility, any kind of political support, any kind of subsidies, any kind of tax exemption, how you are going to treat them. These all are ultimately required, and that is what here it says adjusted present value. What the method is called? Adjusted present value method. Okay, that's what it is applicable. So what adjustment could be? Anything, and that's why now instead of having a generic formula, it's a standard formula, it will become a generic formula. Means whatever set of information is available, you have to keep feeding into that formula and you have to calculate accordingly. That is what it is meant for, and accordingly you can decide about. And number of times we have discussed these things, that will you be interested to invest in Pakistan, will you be interested to invest in Syria versus Singapore, how you are going to decide where you will like to plant your business. So these are the certain questions which has to be answered. Next one is, so adjusted present value, capital budgeting from the parent firm's perspective, risk adjustment in the capital budgeting process, sensitivity analysis, and real options. Okay, these all are there. These all are the factors. Okay, how it works. So other factors which you have to consider is your size and time, size and timing of all relevant cash flows, riskiness associated to it, how much risk is associated. Every business doesn't have the same level of risk, and same business in different location have different risk. Okay, same business at different time has got different risk. Same business with the different ownership has got different risk. So any factor changes, risk changes, and that risk has to be covered up. Then not only that, you are very clear, and because of your competitor some change has taken place, because of social setup some change has taken place, because of political decision some change has taken place, and that will affect you. So competition also matters, and competition not necessarily product to product competition could be there, it could be product to a distant product competition could also be there. Are you getting me? A road transport have competition with metro also, a different kind of setup, right? So even if anything is there, you are going to have a competition. Competition can come from different sources. So how competitor is behaving, even for that research and development, R&D, making a big change, some new changes is going to be possible, and that is going to simply maybe give you a boost to your business or maybe kill your business. Either way it could work, and that has to be decided what is going to be the impact. So That riskiness is there. This is a standard formula we have already done number of times. So, what is NPV? Net present value is your all the cash inflows, like your cash flow 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Generally, what we do in the case of business, which is infinite in time, we divide that infinite time into two parts, finite time and residual time. So, finite time is the time, maybe 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, depending upon the forecasting, depending upon the perceptions, what kind of a growth rate is applicable there. We calculate that period, and after that remaining period we considered as the infinite period. And so that suppose we have got infinite period, so 0 to, or let's say 1 to 5 years is going to be finite, and 6th year onward, 6th year to infinite is another phase. Two phases are there. So for first 5 years we calculate 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and after that we calculate the terminal value, and terminal value is nothing but it is perpetual to the whole. And that is what the two component has been there. So this is what your given period I is equal to 1 to t, t may be 5, 6, 7, whatever the period is there, and then terminal value is going to be there, discount it to the present, ultimately you will get the net value, okay, present value of the total future cash flow. Minus C, C is your initial outlay, and that initial outlay is going to be your initial investment, deducted, your NPV will be available to you. That is your NPV, okay. Next to that, how it is going to work. If it is greater than equal to 0, go ahead with your investment. If it is not that, then in that case, leave it, that project is there. Reject it, right, if it is that. Now, that has been easy to say, and effort is not required, but main question is, after doing your MBA, if this calculation you get it greater than equal to 0, you accept the project, less than 0, reject the project. So this, though even a machine can give you answer, why you require an MBA for it. And what is your contribution to the project? So what is important is, instead of just simply taking these kind of decisions, why not you apply your own skill and make sure that if project is needed, make it viable. What are the factors inside should change so that that project should be positive, NPV positive, it should be viable. That is what required. That viability has to be cross-checked. Okay. Now, next to this is, if suppose these are the certain dissections of all those cash flows. Cash flows is nothing but whatever revenue minus operating cost. I think this will not allow me to. I didn't get your question. Can you repeat? नहीं, अभी आप बात कर रहे हो कि आप कोई बिजनेस प्लान कर रहे हो और पहले कैलकुलेट कर रहे हो. आपका बिजनेस अभी इस्टेब्लिश नहीं हुआ है. शुड आई इस्टेब्लिश बिजनेस और नॉट? तो अगर आपका पूरा का पूरा कैश फ्लो को डिस्काउंट करके और अगर आपके जो इनिशियल इन्वेस्टमेंट है उसको माइनस करते हैं, डिस्काउंटिंग रेट में आप यूज़ करते हो कि आपका जो एक्सपेक्टेड रिटर्न आपको चाहिए वो रिटर्न से डिस्काउंट करते हैं, और डिस्काउंट करने के बाद अगर आपका प्रेजेंट वैल्यू इनिशियल आउटले से बड़ा नहीं होता है, मतलब एनपीवी पॉजिटिव नहीं होता है या कम से कम उतना इक्वल नहीं होता है, एनपीवी ज़ीरो नहीं होता है, तो इसका मतलब कि आप जो रिटर्न सोच रहे हो वो आपको बिजनेस से रिटर्न नहीं मिलने वाला है. और ये चीज़ें अभी आपने बिजनेस एस्टैब्लिश नहीं किया है. तो क्वेश्चन उठता है, शुड यू एस्टैब्लिश द बिजनेस और नॉट? क्या ये काम करना चाहिए नहीं करना चाहिए? आप अप्रेज कर रहे हो, आप बजट बना के कर रहे हो, अभी आपने बिजनेस बनाया नहीं, अभी बिजनेस आप अपने पेन पेपर पे लिख रहे हो, ठीक है. तो वहाँ पे आप काम कर रहे हैं। एक बार अगर आप बिजनेस एस्टैब्लिश कर दिए तब तो इन्वेस्टमेंट हो गया, तब उसके बाद जो लॉसेस होते हैं वहाँ पे फिर आपका ऑपरेशनल एस्पेक्ट पर डिसाइड करते हैं। लेकिन अगर ये आपको पहले से मालूम है कि हमारा फर्स्ट ईयर लॉस होगा तो घबराएंगे नहीं आप, आपको पता था लॉस होगा। फिर सेकेंड ईयर में क्या होगा, थर्ड ईयर में, तो आपको पता होगा। जैसे बिजनेस में आप इकोनॉमिक्स में ही पढ़े होंगे, देयर इज ए ब्रेक इवन पॉइंट। इसका मतलब क्या होता है, एक सर्टेन टाइम पे जाके आपका पूरा का पूरा कॉस्ट रिकवर होगा। प्रॉफिट कब होगा, जब कॉस्ट रिकवर हो जाएगा, और कॉस्ट रिकवर नहीं होगा तो प्रॉफिट नहीं हो पाएगा आपको। तो ये क्वेश्चन उठता है कि आप कैसे डिसाइड करेंगे। ओके, तो यहां पे अगर आप कोई न्यू बिजनेस, जैसे आरटी है, इट इज इंक्रीमेंटल रेवेन्यू, मीन्स एडिशनल रेवेन्यू देन फ्रॉम कमिंग फ्रॉम न्यू बिजनेस। ओसी क्या है, ऑपरेटिंग कॉस्ट है। डी क्या है, जो भी डिप्रिसिएशन है, नया मशीन खरीदेंगे उसका डिप्रिसिएशन। ई क्या होता है, आई क्या होता है, इंटरेस्ट हो गया। और इसका मतलब इस पूरे ब्रैकेट को क्या कहेंगे, ईबीआईटी, ईबीटी कह देंगे, अर्निंग बिफोर टैक्स कह देंगे, क्योंकि आई भी माइनस कर दिया हमने। उसके बाद 1 माइनस टी, टैक्स से माइनस मल्टीप्लाई कर देंगे, क्या हो जाएगा, पोस्ट टैक्स हो गया, प्रॉफिट आफ्टर टैक्स निकल गया। प्रॉफिट आफ्टर टैक्स में फिर जो डिप्रिसिएशन था उसको ऐड कर दीजिए। और कैश फ्लो अगर आप बिग फंडिंग के बेसिस पे कर रहे हैं तो इंटरेस्ट भी क्या करेंगे, इंटरेस्ट भी पोस्ट टैक्स इंटरेस्ट आप ऐड कर देंगे। अब पोस्ट टैक्स इंटरेस्ट ऐड करने से आपका कैश फ्लो बन जाएगा। दिस इज बेसिकली इसको कहते हैं FCFF। FCFF क्या हो गया, फ्री कैश फ्लो टू फर्म। FCFF का कॉन्सेप्ट है। अगर ये इंटरेस्ट वाला पोर्शन नहीं काउंट करेंगे, वो लास्ट वाला नहीं करेंगे, FCF ही हो जाएगा, इक्विटी हो जाएगा। तो अभी तो हम कैपिटल बस्टिंग की बात कर रहे हैं, पैसा कहाँ से आ रहा है, इमटेरियल, तो FCFF की बात करेंगे। दैट्स द वे इट हैज़ बीन यूज्ड। So now net interest, net income plus depreciation plus interest, post tax interest, ये सारा निकाल के नेट ऑपरेटिंग इनकम, ये सब कुछ करके आपको फाइनली ऑपरेटिंग कैश फ्लोज वगैरह बना दे। कैश फ्लोज क्या हो गया, पोस्ट टैक्स ऑपरेटिंग कैश फ्लो प्लस डेप्रिसिएशन, टैक्स सेल के बाद जो भी आया कैश फ्लो। तो एनपीवी आपका, ये आप इस तरह से एनपीवी को आपने क्या किया, सीएफ को देखा, सीएफ को रिप्लेस कर दिया जो टर्म आपने निकाला था, और सीएफ को रिप्लेस करके नीचे डिनोमिनेटर सेम है, आगे का टर्म सेम है, ये रिप्लेस कर दिए और रिप्लेस करके वैल्यू आ गया। ये आपका एनपीवी है, विच इज़ फॉर ए डोमेस्टिक, इट्स अ रिव्यू ऑफ दैट। नाउ अब जब ये कर चुके हैं, अब नाउ वी कैन कन्वर्ट इट विद द एडजस्टमेंट। एनी ऑफ द एडजस्टमेंट इज गोइंग टू बी देयर। हाउ एडजस्टमेंट इज गोइंग टू मेक, what kind of adjustment relationship is going to get applicable? Pardon? बोलिए। प्लांट की लाइफ बराबर नहीं होगी। नहीं, प्लांट की लाइफ तो बराबर होगी, क्योंकि प्लांट की लाइफ तो जो आपने सोचा है वही लाइफ होगा, जो आपका प्लान्ड है, जो आपके वैल्यू दिए हुए हैं वही होगा। लेकिन प्रॉब्लम इस समय कहाँ आएगा, आपको जो अभी बता रहे थे थोड़ी देर पहले, इट मे बी चेंजिंग ऑन डिफरेंट फ्रंट, मे बी ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ कैश फ्लो, ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ योर say OCF is there, ऑपरेटिंग कैश फ्लो। ऑपरेटिंग कैश फ्लो क्या है, रेवेन्यू माइनस एक्सपेंडिचर्स। एक्सपेंडिचर इज गोइंग टू गेट एडजस्टेड। सपोज कीजिए मैं नॉर्थ ईस्ट में प्लान कर रहा हूँ या कहीं वैसे जगह प्लान कर रहा हूँ, और इंडियन गवर्नमेंट ने कहा कि ठीक है, आपको रेलवे पे जो चार्ज है उसमें या टैक्स एग्जम्प्ट कर देते हैं। देखिए, कॉर्पोरेट टैक्स की बात नहीं कर रहा हूँ मैं अभी मैं फ्रेट पे जो टैक्स लगता है उसकी बात कर रहा हूँ। जीएसटी एग्जम्प्ट हो गया, मेरा फ्रेट इमीडिएटली डाउन हो जाएगा, मुझे बेनिफिट मिला ना। अब अगर मुझे इवैल्यूएट करना है कि मुझे दिल्ली में बिजनेस करना है तो मेरा फ्रेट चार्ज कुछ और होगा, बेंगलोर में कुछ और होगा, और नॉर्थ ईस्ट में अगर करने जा रहे हैं तो मेरा चार्ज कुछ और होगा। अच्छा, मैं जो बता रहा हूँ ये सब रियल लाइफ एग्जाम्पल है। ये क्या हो गया, मेरे लिए एक इंसेंटिव हो गया नॉर्थ ईस्ट में कि अगर यहाँ पे मुझे फ्रेट चार्ज 100 देना है तो वहाँ हो सकता है 80 रुपीज़ में ही मेरा वो कैरी हो जाएगा। ओरिजिनली 100 होना चाहिए था, तो 20 रुपीज़ का बेनिफिट मिल गया मुझे। दैट विल रिड्यूस, इट विल हेल्प। तो दैट एडजस्टमेंट इज नीडेड। सो ये एडजस्टमेंट की बात करते हैं तो क्या कहता है, बाय अपीलिंग टू मॉडिग्लियानी एंड मिलर्स रिजल्ट। अब देखिए यहाँ पे ये पूरा कैश फ्लो कैसे मूव करेगा। एपीवी मॉडल में क्या होता है, वैल्यू एडिटिविटी होती है। So if you view that, you'll find out even discounting rate may not necessarily be same. It could be different discounting rate could be there. For example, look here, instead of K, it is going to be U, KU. अनलीवर्ड ऑर्गेनाइजेशन का जो डिस्काउंटिंग रेट होगा, देखिए लीवर्ड ऑर्गेनाइजेशन वर्सेस अनलीवर्ड ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, रिस्क प्रोफाइलिंग वी आर गोइंग टू मेक। अनलीवर्ड ऑर्गेनाइजेशन का जो डिस्काउंटिंग रेट है KU, दैट इज गोइंग टू बी यूज्ड। नेक्स्ट, नाउ टॉर्डी, you look minutely, you'll find out earlier it was same K everywhere. Okay, in the NPV only one discounting rate was there, that was K, but here in APV you have got a different discounting rate. So here KU and I is the interest rate, prevailing interest rate, for which your depreciation amount and interest amount has to be counted, and again terminal value is going to be on KU, unlevered one. Right? So it's changing, value is changing. Not only that, you can look upon, there could be possibility that if it is international in nature, global in nature, the discounting rate applicable, say an Indian organization is looking in business in USA's discounting rate will be different than the Indian discounting rate. So which discounting rate? So now we can look into, no, we will be considering higher of the two. We can make it that. So suppose now I say KD is the discounting rate of domestic market versus KF is the discounting rate of foreign market. Higher of the two, I'll take the discounting. That I can make it. Or there is a way, I'll take a discounting on the basis of my domestic market. These are the certain subjectivity starts coming into the adjustment. We can make that adjustment. So how this value is going to get considered? So it says the APV model is a value additivity approach to capital bursting. Additivity approach means as the factors keep on coming, more and more factors will be there. That is what I was talking about, a generic model. Generic model is a model in which whatever the component information is there, you keep on adding. If it is information is not there, don't put that information. What is a standard model? A standard model, whatever information is out, all set of information is going to be there. Is it clear? If you are not going to have that information, you will not be able to calculate it. So this calculation is required. Now, APV model, each cash flow is discounted at a rate that is appropriate to the riskiness of that cash flow. Why we considered, why this author is actually referring to Miller-Modigliani. Miller-Modigliani model, I think you had studied that again in the corporate finance at that point of time when it was related to calculation of capital structure, how capital structure has to be decided, and you know that levered versus unlevered firm component had been used. So what Miller-Modigliani had made it that they had decided which discounting rate should be used. So they suggested, first of all, you make a risk class based on a certain risk profile, and after that classification of the risk class, put that organization into that particular risk class and appropriate discounting rate should be applied. To say in a easier term or simpler term, if suppose you decided that there has to be a 4 risk class ABCD, A could be negligible risk, B could be low risk, C could be high risk, D could be very high risk. So you have got a very clear mindset what are this ABCD means. And you have already predefined discounting rate. If it is meant for A, which is a very low risk, what kind of discounting rate will be applicable? If it is B, low risk, what kind of discounting rate will be there, and so on. Then in that case, you have already made a frame, and accordingly your discounting rate is applicable. Then next to that, you got one particular company which you have to evaluate on the basis of, and what kind of discounting rate should be applied. So first measure your riskiness of that organization, and if it falls into B category, apply B rate. If falls into D category, apply D rate, whatever D rate is there. And that is what the statement here it is made, and that statement says here is, what that statement is? It says APV model, each cash flow is discounted at a rate that is appropriate to the riskiness of that cash flow, whatever appropriate is there to that. Donald Lazard developed an APV model for a MNC analyzing a foreign capital expenditure, and the model recognizes, देखिए डोमेस्टिक कैपिटल बस्टिंग किया हमने, एनपीवी किया, एनपीवी से एपीवी किया, अब हम डोनाल्ड लज़र्ड का जो इंटरनेशनल मार्केट में, इंटरनेशनल फाइनेंस में जो यूज हो रहा है कि अगर आप दूसरी कंट्री में, दूसरी जगह पे आप इन्वेस्ट कर रहे हो तो कैसे अप्लाई करेंगे. सो फॉर एमएनसीज दे आर एनालाइजिंग ए फॉरेन कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर. द मॉडल रिकॉग्नाइजेज मेनी ऑफ द particulars peculiar to foreign direct investment. And this is what the value has been there. Now understand one very interesting part which I had already mentioned you earlier, and that mentioning you earlier was related to valuation of foreign investment. Recall my economic exposure class. When I was talking to you, you are evaluating whether you should invest in particular country. You have 2, 3, 4, 5 countries into your choice. Investment is going to be mutually exclusive. Means if you invested in country A, you will not be having sufficient fund available for another B or C. आप किसी एक ही कंट्री में जाके इन्वेस्ट कर सकते हैं, इतना ही पैसा आपके पास है, तो म्यूचुअली एक्सक्लूसिव है. ठीक है, तो अगर आप कंट्री ए में कर रहे हो तो कंट्री बी में नहीं कर पाएंगे. तो इवैल्यूएट कैसे करेंगे? इवैल्यूएट कंट्री ए में डाल के करके चेक करके देखेंगे, कंट्री बी में चेक करके देखेंगे, कंट्री सी में देखेंगे, कंट्री डी में देखेंगे. और 4 कंट्री को देख रहे हैं, चारों कंट्री का 4 अलग अलग करेंसी है. इज इट क्लियर? चारों माने करेंसी जो है वो डिफरेंट है. तो इवैल्यूएशन के लिए टेक्निक बताया था कि आप ऑलवेज डोमेस्टिक करेंसी में इवैल्यूएट करेंगे. तो करेंसी ए का आपकी कंट्री के साथ का क्या करेंसी एक्सचेंज रेट है, अपनी करेंसी में आप इवैल्यूएट कीजिए. कंट्री बी का जब इवैल्यूएट करने लगेंगे तो आपकी तो सारा का सारा जो मेजरमेंट होगा, सारा का सारा जो इवैल्यूएशन होगा, जो आप एनपीवी निकालोगे, नाउ इस ये एनपीवी नहीं एक्चुअली एपीवी हो जाएगा. जब आप एपीवी निकालेंगे तो आपको सबसे बेस्ट पॉजिटिविटी किस में मिल रहा है, कंट्री ए में मिल रहा है, कंट्री बी में मिल रहा है, कंट्री सी में मिल रहा है, आप डिसाइड कर लो अपने हिसाब से. इतना ही तो करना है ना. दिस इज व्हाट यू आर गोइंग टू डू. एम आई क्लियर और नॉट? तो हर कंट्री का आप निकाल के देखो, सब जगह जो आपके मेरिट्स एंड लिमिटेशंस हैं आप उनको इवैल्यूएट कर लो, किस जगह बेनिफिशियल है आप करो. और इसमें रिपीटेडली मैंने कहा कि सीरिया वर्सेस अगर सिंगापुर अगर आप इवैल्यूएट करो, दोनों जो करप्शन परसेप्शन पे, सोशल डिस्टर्बेंसेस के हिसाब से अगर देखोगे तो दोनों एक्सट्रीम हैं, टू एक्सट्रीम लेवल पे है. अगर मैं सारे फैक्टर को इंक्लूड करके भी अगर मेरा सिग्नल दे रहा है कि सीरिया में बिजनेस करो, करप्शन के साथ भी है, क्योंकि उसका फ़ायदा मैं भी उठाऊंगा ना फिर. तो अगर वो दे रहा है तो फिर भी इन्वेस्ट देयर, बट दैट शुड बी नॉर्मली. सीरिया का एग्जाम्पल मेरी नज़र में एक्सट्रीम एग्जाम्पल है. आज भी सीरिया इज़ नॉट अ सेफ प्लेस इन ए नॉर्मल कंडीशंस, इन ए बिजनेस कंडीशन. लेकिन अगर उसको सिर्फ करप्शन तक, उसको सिर्फ सोशल डिस्टर्बेंसेस तक, ब्राइब तक लिमिट कर दिया जाए तो फिर इवैल्यूएट आप कर सकते हैं. तो कैसे करेंगे, कैसे देखेंगे? यू हैव टू हैव दैट पार्ट। अच्छा ओके, जब तक ये स्क्रीन साइलेंट है कितनी बार हम इसको जगाएंगे? तो उन्होंने भी हाथ खड़ा कर दिया, कहा कि ये प्रोजेक्टर का प्रॉब्लम है। प्रोजेक्टर हाथ खड़ा कर रहा है, क्यों 31 को पढ़ा रहे हो? एनीवे, तो है क्या कि आप देखो, अगर सबसे पहले क्या क्या होता है, एक सिंपल इंगेज हो जाओ आप लोग। इंगेज हो के आप देखो तो सबसे पहले क्या होगा, आपका प्रिंसिपल इन्वेस्टमेंट होगा। प्रिंसिपल इन्वेस्टमेंट होगा तो प्रिंसिपल इन्वेस्टमेंट में अगर आज मैं सोच रहा हूँ कि चलो 1 जनवरी 2024 को मैं एक नया बिजनेस एस्टेब्लिश करने जा रहा हूँ, लेट्स से ब्राज़ील में डिसाइड किया, रियो डी जेनेरियो में जाके बिजनेस एस्टेब्लिश करते हैं, राइट? वहाँ बिजनेस एस्टेब्लिशमेंट का वैल्यूएशन करेंगे। लेट्स से इनिशियल इन्वेस्टमेंट इज़ रिक्वायरिंग फॉर 2 years ऑफ टाइम, 2 साल जेस्टेशन पीरियड होगा। उसके बाद मेरा कैश इनफ्लो होगा, स्टार्ट होगा। बिजनेस में ही होता है, और बिजनेस है तो परपिचुअल होगा, चलता रहेगा। मैं पहले 5 साल अच्छा ग्रोथ होगा, उसके बाद एक कांस्टेंट ग्रोथ हो जाएगा। कांस्टेंट ग्रोथ में एक टर्मिनल वैल्यू निकालेंगे, राइट? यही है बिजनेस का। अब इस बिजनेस में जो वैल्यू निकालेंगे तो रिजल्ट क्या होगा? आप फर्स्ट जो इन्वेस्ट कर रहे हो ब्राज़ीलियन रियल है, इंडियन रुपी, वहाँ जो इन्वेस्टमेंट होगा, मान लो 100 मिलियन रियल का इन्वेस्टमेंट है मेरा। अब 100 मिलियन रियल इंडियन रुपी में कितना होगा, काउंट होगा। वो जो एक्सचेंज रेट होगा वो आज का स्पॉट एक्सचेंज रेट होगा। अभी की बात कर रहे हैं, स्पॉट एक्सचेंज रेट हो गया, S0 कह सकते हैं उसको, ठीक है? रियल / इंडियन रुपी INR हो जाएगा। 1 रियल में कितने INR? यही है ना एक्सचेंज रेट। आप लोग तो फॉरेक्स मार्केट पढ़ चुके हैं, तो एक आ जाएगा, स्पॉट रेट हो गया। अच्छा, इसके बाद क्या होगा? सेकंड कैश फ्लो पे ही पहले फोकस करें, नॉर्मल कैश फ्लो पे, और कुछ हो ना हो, इंटरनेशनल है। फिर अब 2 साल के बाद क्या होगा? 2 साल के एंड में या 3 साल के एंड में मेरा पहला कैश इनफ्लो आएगा। मान लो 2 साल जेस्टेशन हुआ, तीसरे साल के बिगनिंग में बिजनेस स्टार्ट हुआ, मेरा प्रोडक्शन स्टार्ट हो गया, ऑपरेशन स्टार्ट हो गया, आई विल स्टार्ट टेकिंग इट। कैश इनफ्लोज ऑलवेज ईयर एंड में काउंट होता है, एंड ऑफ द ईयर। एंड ऑफ द ईयर में कैश इनफ्लो काउंट हुआ, उस समय मुझे वहाँ किस चीज़ में मिलेगा? रियल में मिलेगा। मेरी सारी अर्निंग रियल में आएगी। मुझे उस रियल के, अब मेरा कैश फ्लो CF1, CF2, CF3, 3rd ईयर एंड, 4th ईयर एंड, 5th ईयर एंड, 6th ईयर एंड, 7th ईयर एंड, ऐसे ही आएगा ना। और वो आएगा, क्या लगता है जो आज का स्पॉट रेट है रियल वर्सेस INR वही रहेगा? नो। तो इसका मतलब अब मेरा ST1, S1, S2, S3, S4, S5 होने लगेगा। हर जगह कैश फ्लो चेंज करेगा। तो रियल में ही करते, लेकिन अब तो मुझे हर बार डोमेस्टिक करेंसी में कन्वर्ट करना है, और डोमेस्टिक करेंसी में कन्वर्ट करना, तो इसका मतलब अब एक तरफ तो फोरकास्ट करना है कि मेरे बिजनेस का कैश फ्लो क्या होगा, और दूसरी तरफ मुझे फोरकास्ट करना है कि रियल कहाँ चेंज करके जाएगा। डबल पार्ट हो गया। अब इंटरनेशनल हो गए, सिर्फ बिजनेस ही नहीं, एक तो बिजनेस फोरकास्टिंग है ही। अगर मैं अपनी इकोनॉमी में ही फोरकास्ट करता तो अपनी इकोनॉमी में मुझे यही काम अगर मैंने हम ब्राज़ील में ना जाके अगर बेंगलोर में जाके करते तो कम से कम INR रहता। अब INR फोरकास्ट नहीं करना था, मुझे सिर्फ कैश फ्लो फोरकास्ट करना था। लेकिन अब यहाँ क्या करना पड़ रहा है कि वो तो पूरा ब्राज़ीलियन रियल का क्या रेट होगा, और रियल अप्रिशिएट डिप्रिशिएट दोनों किसी डायरेक्शन से हो सकता है। पहले अप्रिशिएट बाद में डिप्रिशिएट, या वाइस वर्सा, कुछ भी हो सकता है। तो इसका मतलब पूरा इंडिपेंडेंट फोरकास्टिंग करनी पड़ेगी मुझे। तो कैश फ्लो ही ट्रांसलेट करने वक्त मुझे कई एक्सचेंज रेट आएंगे, तो इसका मतलब एक एक्सचेंज रेट मैट्रिक्स निकालना पड़ेगा। पूरा एक्सचेंज रेट मैट्रिक्स चाहिए मुझे, है या नहीं है? बिजनेस करने के लिए, कैलकुलेशन के लिए चाहिए। और मैट्रिक्स में अगर मैं आपको सिंपली अब कहूँ कि ब्राज़ीलियन का जो इन्फ्लेशन दे दूँ, इंटरेस्ट रेट दे दूँ, तो आप अपने उससे फोरकास्ट करो एक्सचेंज रेट। रियल लाइफ में तो यही करना पड़ेगा ना। एग्जाम में कहोगे सर ऐसे कैसे होगा? हाँ, 3 ही घंटे तो दे रहे हो, एक क्वेश्चन में तो आधे घंटे में कैसे इतना काम कर लेंगे? चलो एग्जाम में क्वेश्चन नहीं भी आता है, एग्जाम में थ्योरेटिकल रह जाता है या बेसिक रह जाता है, इन्वेस्टमेंट, इंटरनेशनल इन्वेस्टमेंट रह जाता है, लेकिन प्रैक्टिकल लाइफ में तो क्वेश्चन रहेगा ही रहेगा। कि आप कैसे डिसाइड करोगे? क्लियर? क्या होगा एक्सचेंज रेट? अच्छा, एक्सचेंज रेट में दो तरह का इन्फ्लेशन होता है. एक इन्फ्लेशन इज द नॉर्मल एवरेज इकोनॉमिक इन्फ्लेशन which you hear for a country. This country has got this much inflation. India also has got an announced inflation. But then there is another inflation which you should be sensitive enough when you are into business. That is sectoral inflation. Inflation in that particular sector. That is also important. Right or not? If suppose I am going to be in a manufacturing one, manufacturing might have a very different inflation altogether compared to overall inflation. I am into a construction sector, so my inflation will be related to construction rather than making an average inflation. So these are the certain questions which requires addressal. Clear? Third important point, if Brazil says that, sorry dear, you can't take your 100% profit back, withholding tax, तब मैं उसको भी कैलकुलेट करूँगा, भाई लेके नहीं जाऊँगा. वहाँ कोई ब्राज़ीलियन ऑफिसर कहता है कि मैं तभी आपका ये बिल पास करूँगा, ये फाइल मूव करेगा जब आप मुझे भी कुछ दोगे, राइट? या गवर्नमेंट कहती है अरे रे आप तो इंडिया से आए हो, वी आर ब्रिक्स नेशन, आई विल गिव यू सम टैक्स एग्जम्पशन, सम टैक्स बेनिफिट. Every factor has to be considered. That is what nutshell. So how it looks like in the numerical problem. So I'll show you and have a look of it. So whenever you say APV, understand what is this? This is C0, initial investment, and it's better you can take a snap quickly so that you can refer it again and again. C0 is the cash outflow, initial investment, which has to be multiplied by exchange rate S0, आज के exchange rate से. Is it clear? S0 exchange rate. So S0 into C0 is what? C0 may be in Brazilian real, 100 million real. S0 is exchange rate multiplied, this is going to be your Indian rupee, initial investment. Am I clear? Next, come here. Your operating cash flow, it is going to be T is equal to 1 to T. First year S1, second year S2, third year S3, so seventh year S7. Your OCF will be there. So your forecasting OCF is also first year cash flow. अगर बढ़ा कैश फ्लो और आपका एक्सचेंज रेट बढ़ा तो मैग्नीफाइड इफेक्ट बढ़ेगा, एक बढ़ा दूसरा घटा तो नेट इफेक्ट इस तरह से आपका आएगा. टैक्स रेट एप्लीकेबल देयर इन विच कंट्री? ब्राजील, जहां आपको देना है, ठीक है, टैक्स रेट. और डिस्काउंटिंग किससे करेंगे? अनलीवर्ड कैपिटल कॉस्ट इन डोमेस्टिक मार्केट, डी यूडी, डोमेस्टिक मार्केट. क्लियर? दैट्स द वे यू मूव. सिमिलरली यहां पे फिर डेप्रिसिएशन का हो गया, इंटरेस्ट का हो गया, और सब में देखोगे आपका. अब ये क्या है? यहां पे तो सिंपली ये था. अब ये क्या है? ये एक्चुअली क्या है? ये एक्सचेंज रेट बार जो दिया हुआ है, इट इज गोइंग टू बी एवरेज वन, बिकॉज कैश फ्लो इज नॉट समथिंग ऑन वन डे, लास्ट डे. और अगर ईयर में पूरा फ्लक्चुएशन है, लंबा फ्लक्चुएशन है, तो क्या होगा? हम एवरेज ले लें. दैट्स एवरेज इज गोइंग टू गेट अप्लाइड. Don't be afraid of this lengthy formula. This length तो इससे बड़ा लेंथ क्रिएट होगा, क्योंकि अगर 10 आइटम सपोज करो मैंने निकाल दिया, 10 आइटम्स, ब्राइब का भी निकाला, कंसेशन का भी निकाला, एक तरफ वहाँ ऑफिसर्स ब्राइब ले रहा है और सरकार कंसेशन दे रहा है, टैक्स बेनिफिट मिल रहा है, आपका तो फॉर्मूला बड़ा था, जेनेरिक फॉर्मूला है, इसीलिए इसको कहते हैं एडिटिव फॉर्मूला. तो हर आइटम को आप इनकॉर्पोरेट करोगे, यहाँ फायदा, यहाँ नुकसान, यहाँ फायदा, जहाँ फायदा हो रहा है पॉजिटिव होता जाएगा, जहाँ नुकसान होता जाएगा वहाँ माइनस करते चले जाओगे. फॉर्मूला को आप डेवलप कर लो अपने तरीके से, तो ये कर सकते हैं. तो क्या हो गया ये? देखिए आगे, ये तो अनलीवर्ड डोमेस्टिक रेट यूज कर लिया हमने डिस्काउंटिंग के लिए. ये अलग अलग कैश फ्लो. द मार्जिनल कॉर्पोरेट टैक्स रेट ही लार्जर ऑफ द पेरेंट्स ऑफ फॉरेन सब्सिडी. टैक्स रेट में एक चीज बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग पार्ट है. टैक्स रेट में ऑलवेज यू विल हैव टू हैव द हायर ऑफ द टू। याद रखिएगा जब भी आप इंटरनेशनली इवैल्यूएट करते हैं। सपोज करो मैं ब्राज़ील में ऑलरेडी 40% टैक्स दे के आया, इंडिया में आया पता चला नाउ एप्लीकेबल टैक्स रेट इज 30%, तो सरकार आपको 10% अपने पॉकेट से नहीं देगी। क्या होगा? 40%, इंडिया में कितना है? 30%। इंडिया वाले बोले टैक्स मुझे चाहिए, आप आए हो, आप इंडियन हो, बाहर से अर्न करके आए हो, टैक्स दो। मैं बोला तो मैं भाई टैक्स दे के आया हूँ। बोला कोई बात नहीं, उतना मैं आपको ड्रॉबैक दे दूंगा। ड्रॉबैक दूंगा तो ड्रॉबैक मतलब क्या होगा? 30% इंडिया में टैक्स माइनस 40%, फिगर माइनस में चला गया। बोला टाटा भाई जाओ, आप आगे बढ़ो, ठीक है। लेकिन अगर मैं वहाँ 20% टैक्स दे के आ रहा हूँ, 10% कहेगा यहाँ दे दो। इज इट क्लियर? So that's why the method is higher of the two. Higher of the two has to be applied. Next, अच्छा, ये restricted fund. What is restricted fund? मतलब क्या हो गया? That's withholding tax. This example, have you taken this? And that is what LP stands here, the loan payments, some subsidy. और देखोगे सब जगह डिस्काउंटिंग रेट अकॉर्डिंगली चेंज हुआ है, कहीं यूडी है और कहीं आईडी है, इंटरेस्ट रेट इन डोमेस्टिक मार्केट टू इज देयर। एक्चुअली डी क्यों यूज कर रहे हैं? वी हैव टू इवैल्यूएट इट फॉर आवर डोमेस्टिक पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू। डोमेस्टिक पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू इवैल्यूएशन इज गोइंग टू बी देयर, सो दैट इज एप्लीकेबल। एनी काइंड ऑफ कंसेशन लोन मिलता है ना, कंसेशन लोन, दैट कंसेशन लोन हैज टू बी अप्लाइड। सो नाउ हाउ इट इज गोइंग टू वर्क? Now this RF, restricted fund free, how it is going to be there, or concessional loan, look into this. These all are plus items. So though I have already explained you earlier what this concessional loan stands here, or what this restricted fund has to be there. I was talking about in the same that class, economic exposure class, when I mentioned that suppose I am an exporter to country, my product is already sold to Brazil and I am selling in Brazil, let's have that restrictions related to repatriation of my profit. So I have to, that is my money, but I have to keep it there, I have to spend there, okay. When I have to spend there, so what I did, I open an account and I am putting that amount there. So now I require 100 million real to start a business, equity portion, and out of 100 million, say 50 million is already there in my account. So if 50 million is already in my account, what happens? I need equity 100 million, but my 50 million is already there. I can use that 50 million. So those funds which was restricted there is now free, available for my part, so that fund is available. So actually C0 minus, this is minus C0 minus RF, whatever remaining is there, that is what I have to arrange. Yes or not? That is only I have to have. अगर 100 मिलियन की जरूरत है और मेरा 40 मिलियन वहां पड़ा हुआ, तो मुझे 60 मिलियन ही तो चाहिए ना, ओके. माइनस 100 मिलियन प्लस 40 मिलियन मेक्स माइनस 60 मिलियन. दैट इज व्हाट रिक्वायर्ड, दैट्स व्हाई इट इज देयर. प्लस अब मान लो कि गवर्नमेंट वहां कहती है कि चलो जी आपको मैं कंसेशनल लोन दे देता हूं, 30 मिलियन लोन भी दे देता है मुझे. एम आई क्लियर? 100 मिलियन का बिजनेस है, 40 मिलियन मेरा अपना निकल गया, 30 मिलियन का लोन भी आ गया मेरे पास, कंसेशनल लोन मिल गया, तो मुझे अब चाहिए कितना? सिंपली बचा हुआ 30 मिलियन. आर यू गेटिंग द फॉर्मूला कैसे बना है? क्या बना गया? तो ये एडिटिव मॉडल है. इस मॉडल में अगर कंसेशनल लोन नहीं है तो जीरो हो जाएगा वैल्यू. नहीं है कोई मेरा रेस्ट्रिक्टेड फंड नहीं है वहां पे, वो जीरो हो जाएगा. फिर पूरा का पूरा मुझे सी चाहिए, पूरा मुझे सी लेना पड़ेगा. क्लियर? that get captured into interest payment also. So जब लोन रीपेमेंट कर रहे हैं और इंटरेस्ट पेमेंट कर रहे हैं तो ये आपको डोमेस्टिक मार्केट का फर्क पड़ेगा, क्योंकि इंटरेस्ट तो एक्चुअली कम पड़ रहा है ना आपको, तो दैट बेनिफिट इज ऑल्सो कमिंग अप. तो वो जो कंसेशन का जो बेनिफिट है, दैट्स व्हाई इट इज एक्चुअली वॉट एवर द कंसेशनल पोर्शन इज देयर, लोन रीपेमेंट बेनिफिट इज गोइंग टू कम to you. Or sometime it happens interest free loan is also there, no interest at all. Okay, a good number of welfare projects could be available at a interest free rate, maybe from World Bank, maybe from UNDP. All those are actually funding lot of प्रोजेक्ट्स. यू माइट बी हियरिंग कि वो इंटरेस्ट फ्री आपको मिला. जनरली पॉवर्टी एलिविएशन से, बेटर लाइवलीहुड से, हेल्थ क्लियरेंस से, इन सब का जो प्रोजेक्ट होता है, ये सब प्रोजेक्ट आपके इंटरेस्ट फ्री हो जाते हैं. तो इस तरह के प्रोजेक्ट को एवेल्युएट करता है. एंड देन नाउ क्वेश्चन इज, एनीवे व्हाट आई एम डूइंग, आई विल बी simply stopping here, giving you on the board now. ये इससे काम नहीं चलेगा. It says not through a screen. So we got that NPV has to get changed to APV, adjusted present value, which requires now all kinds of adjustments. All kinds of adjustments has to be divided into two parts. Either it will be positive or it will be negative. Positive and negative, two components are there. अगर न्यूमेरिकल आपको होगा, आपको फॉर्मूला में सिंपली इतना ध्यान रखना है दो चीज का. फर्स्ट, डोमेस्टिक currency has to be used for valuation. Means whatever foreign currency is there, forex is there, that should convert into domestic currency. And when that has to be converting into domestic currency, exchange rate is required. Exchange rate is required. Various exchange rate. Okay. How those exchange rate will be actually used? Exchange rate you have to forecast. See, the need is originating. You have to forecast that exchange rate. And you have to forecast the exchange rate. For that, various models are there, at least purchasing power parity or interest rate parity can be applied to make a forecast of that exchange rate. That forecasting has to be used. When this forecasting has been done, so now what forecasting you are going to make it? Forecasting of exchange rate, that's a number one. Number two, forecasting of cash flow is also there. Cash flow forecasting is also required. Okay, evaluation can easily be made. Two parts are there. Part number one is the business part. Part number two, adjustment part. All adjustment has to be made, and your adjusted present value calculation can easily be made. Right? From examination point of view, maybe theory question, maybe numerical question. Theory question, when we say theory question, concept has to be discussed. How you will be making a capital structure or capital expenditure appraisal for a foreign investment. How you will be deciding that? What are the factors you will take into account? Keep your capital budgeting in mind. Cash flow determination, economic life determination, how evaluation will be there. That a complete 10 to numerical answers should be there even for theoretical question. Okay, what are the aspects you will be covering up? आपको cash flow determine करना है, आपको depreciation decide करना है, आपको discounting rate decide करना है. अब discounting rate में important क्या है आपको कि जो domestic market का जो discounting rate है, जो अपनी country का discounting rate है, वो use करना है. Unlevered use करना है. जो इंटरेस्ट रेट या डेप्रिसिएशन से रिलेटेड यूज करना है उसमें इंटरेस्ट रेट यूज करना है. आई जो इंटरेस्ट रेट, प्रिवेलिंग इंटरेस्ट रेट इन योर डोमेस्टिक मार्केट, दैट यू शुड. ऐसा क्यों कर रहे हैं? बिकॉज दैट इज योर अपॉर्चुनिटी कॉस्ट. ये क्यों यूज कर रहे हैं वर्ड? ऐसा क्यों भाई डोमेस्टिक का क्यों यूज कर रहे हैं? करना तो बिजनेस ब्राजील में है, ले इंडिया कर रहे हैं, क्यों ऐसा वैल्यू ले रहे हैं? बिकॉज दिस इज माई अपॉर्चुनिटी. अगर मेरे घर में ही अगर फायदेमंद बिजनेस है, मैं ब्राजील क्या करने जाऊंगा? आर यू गेटिंग मी? Why I'll be actually increasing the exposure? Think of any of the business and you will find out that kind of a policy decisions had to be there. That's the way capital budgeting has to be made in the international market. Last one small chapter, and that chapter is how internationally your inventory location could be there. And that inventory location in the global environment can be used by using all the basic principles of inventory decisions or inventory location in domestic market, like availability of the material, storage locations, okay, where it is convenient, comfortable, where your market is there, where your production line is there. All these parameters basically decides that where you will locate it. Basically, instead of inventory, our syllabus has said more on the cash management, and that's why cash management we have already studied in detail. Very lengthier way we have studied. Right? So, three various aspects in this entire international finance. Aspect number one, we have got forex market, detailed, good number of question. Second, multinational business operations, MNCs, how they are operating, how they are managing. And third aspect, we had already discussed how an investor looks the international market, whether it was international equity market, international bond market, international portfolio market, international investment opportunity for the retail investor, for institutional investor, for fund managers, how they are looking into. Where we studied, we looked upon foreign bonds, okay, and euro bonds. We looked upon our equity market as a ADR, ZDR, how those markets are there. Similarly, we looked upon in portfolio, if you are investing instead of one country in many countries, how this is going to be there. One numerical question you also must prepare based on international portfolio, and that numerical question will be something like very simple, very easy question, and that question will be, suppose you have got say country A and country B or say country C also, there is a return given to you, risk given to you for A, for return in B and risk in B, return in C, risk in C, it has been given to you, and then in that case you have been asked to prepare a portfolio, optimum portfolio. Normally without software you can't decide optimization here. So what is basic requirement? We will make it that you will be advised, suppose your investment is 40% in A, 35% in B, 25% in C, what will be your portfolio return and risk associated to that? And like that, value will be set. There is a possibility that one of the two may be having negative relationship. Keep in mind, whenever you are creating a portfolio, negative relationship, correlation coefficient where it is negative is always better. When covariance is negative, it is always better. That should be used for your valuation purposes. So, all about it. Any question from your side, you are free to ask. And that is what I have already mentioned. Any question you have, you can look into your syllabus, you can look into that. Do maximum numerical practice here. Being a last session, I am available for you to answer. Any question? Yes? Any question you have? Please have a look of it. Entire what we discussed. No question? That's good. Happy to have intelligent lot to see. No. None. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Bye. Stop कर दिए.